Welcome back once
Welcome
again.
back
We're here.
to a 250th year old themed episode of Umineko.
250 years, and there's still not a Sakonia Phase 2. Sakonia Phase 2. It's so over. Ryukishi's been fucking Necronomicon out of the ground, and he still isn't writing the fucking second phase. It's actually just over.
Dude,
It's actually an experiment to, like, test our resolve. It,
this Psychonia's never coming out.
oh my god. I was about to make a 6 years
Is
joke, but it's been more than 6 years.
It's been more than 6 years?
It was 2019.
Oh. Oh.
I'm still fucking talking about it. All right.
Oh no.
We've got a Genji. Oh, it's gonna be me. I need to talk. Genji tightened his brow tie. Genji tightened his bow tie and looked outside through a crack in the curtains. Maybe the rain had died down a tiny bit since the previous night, but the thick rain clouds didn't seem like they'd be letting any trace of the morning sun get by. The morning was dim and far from refreshing. It seems it will last all day after all.
Sorry for keeping you waiting, Genji-sama.
Kanon finished checking his appearance and exited the washroom. On their normal schedule, it was rare for anyone to have to suffer going straight from a midnight shift to an early morning shift. They were on a special schedule for the 2 days of the family conference. However, unless the typhoon passed today, the relative stay on this island would last until tomorrow. Kanon thought it best to be prepared for the special schedule to last an extra day. The two of them left the guest house, opening their umbrellas. The rose garden had been devastated by the wind and rain on the previous night. Even though they spent several days making it beautiful to welcome the guests, one stormy night was enough to ruin it. Kanon sighed. The two headed for the mansion. They were supposed to meet up with Gohda and prepare breakfast. Gohda was such a perfectionist that he had probably already woken up and was probably already preparing a breakfast as exquisite and elegant as glasswork. They reached the overhang by the entrance of the mansion and folded up their umbrellas. Genji took a bundle of several keys from his pocket and unlocked the front door. The Ushimiya family mansion was the only thing on Rokonjima, so in the past, they hadn't been in the habit of locking up. However, Natsuhi had ordered that the mansion be locked up from midnight to early morning. Ever since then, unlocking the door in the early morning had become part of the servant's morning shift. This task had been given to Genji and Kanon, so that Gohda could start preparing breakfast as soon as he woke up. Silence had fallen in the mansion, giving the impression that the mansion itself was still asleep. Well then, let us begin the morning chores. Giving them an accent now.
Yes, sir.
The two of them split up and began opening the curtains throughout the mansion. If the curtains stayed closed, the mansion would remain enveloped in faint darkness, as those still trapped in the previous night. Following a well-rehearsed procedure, Kanon went around the mansion, opening the curtains for one window after another, without having to retrace his steps once. Even with his horrible weather, drawing the curtains made it feel just a little bit like morning. While doing that, he passed in front of the kitchen. Even though he hadn't smelled anything yet, his stomach started aching for some of Gohda's prized cooking.
Good morning.
He tried to greet Gohda, who should have been getting breakfast ready, but Gohda was nowhere to be seen. The kitchen was darkly lit, and not only were the curtains not open, but the fan wasn't even running. It was still cold, without any trace of fire being lit, so of course there were no signs of breakfast being made either. Though it would have been inexcusable, perhaps Gohda had overslept. Even servants are only human. They sometimes sleep in and show up late. In the rare case that such a thing happens, it's part of a servant's code to hide the unsightly scene before anyone notices, smoothly cover it up, and make sure the family never even realizes that anything has gone wrong. Cannon took the receiver of the phone that had been fitted to the wall and dialed a number for the extension line in the servant's sleeping room. He couldn't hear that characteristic sound of a dial tone. Cannon tried picking up the receiver again, but even so, he couldn't hear the usual dial tone. He tried dialing again, but it had no apparent effect. Could the lightning last night have damaged some machine, breaking the extension line? The equipment in this mansion was all worn out. Cannon fully understood that even the smallest thing could have caused it to break down. He gave up trying to wake Gohda with the phone and dashed over to the servant's sleeping room.
This is
Natsuhi.
Natsuhi.
How long has it been since I stopped sleeping and started lazily staring up at the ceiling? Oops. That vague sense of awakening was part of Natsuhi's usual morning experience. She always slept lightly, and she couldn't sleep at all without medicine. To Natsuhi, sleep was definitely not a happy thing. When she looked outside, she saw that it was still pouring. If she hadn't sensed a tiny amount of light, she might have mistakenly thought it was still the previous night. She herself was one of the hosts, so she mustn't wake up later than her guests. Urging herself on, she raised up her body, which still hadn't completely recovered from yesterday's weariness. No one would torment her as long as she remained inside this room, and her headache wouldn't get any worse here. This room was the only place she could find peace. So when she left, it meant returning to the world where her husband's siblings kept trying to stab each other in the back. In that case, wouldn't it be better to just stay locked up in this room forever? That ridiculous notion brought a bitter smile to Natsuhi's face. She was starting to sound like Kinzo. Though she often complained about Kinzo staying locked up in his own room and refusing to attend to everyone else, the truth was that she longed to do the same. Natsuhi gave her head a small shake, and her fantasy was replaced by the reawakening of her usual headache. When she reached for the doorknob, trying to leave the room, her hand touched the scorpion charm that she'd hung from it before going to sleep the previous night. It was Maria's charm, which Natsuhi had received from Jessica. Didn't Jessica say something about having the power to repel magic, telling her to hang it from her doorknob? Maybe it was thanks to the charm that at least this room had been protected from the malice of her husband's siblings. As she thought this, her mood began to get a little more cheerful. I wonder if I have Jessica to thank for the little bit of peaceful sleep I managed to receive. Then Natsuhi remembered. That's right. Last night I promised Jessica that I'd give her a charm of my own in exchange for this one, didn't I? Natsuhi opened a drawer on her dresser and took out an antique accessory case that she had treasured when she was a child. Inside, there were many small objects that Natsuhi had thought were valuable at the time. From amidst those, she pulled out a red pouch. Inside was a small, round mirror, about 10 centimeters across. It looked quite old, but the design on the back of the mirror was very ornate, and it felt like something with historical value. At the very least, it seemed much more authentic than the other charm, which looked like a plastic scorpion keychain. When she had heard that this was a spiritual mirror for warding off evil spirits, and she had been given it especially by her grandmother when her grandfather's mementos had been distributed. I think I intonated that right? It had been believed since long ago that a strange power resided in this mirror. Perhaps people thought it could reflect calamity and malice in the same way it reflected light. Natsuhi returned the mirror to its pouch. It would probably be a fitting object to hand over to Jessica. Just as she was placing it in her pocket, the sound of someone knocking on the door suddenly echoed throughout the room. Yes! Good morning, madame. It is Genji. My apologies for waking you so early. I'm coming now. What is it? No servant had ever come to her this early in the morning, nor had they come to wake her in person. Perhaps something bad had happened. Maybe some fatal oversight had been made while preparing breakfast, something that would shame the household in front of their guests. Natsuhi took a deep breath in anticipation for whatever trouble she was about to hear of. When she opened the door, Genji once again gave a morning greeting while bowing deeply. Natsuhi tentatively responded. Good morning. Did something happen? My apologies. It would seem that the telephones have broken down due to the lightning last night. This voice feels so off. The extension telephone isn't working, so please forgive my coming to see you directly. The extension telephone isn't working. That will be troublesome. Will it be possible to fix it? I am afraid we don't know the location of the damage. Later on, I would like to call an expert and have him repair it. Does that mean we'll be unable to have it repaired until after the typhoon passes? Then it will remain broken down for the duration of our guest's stay. Will that hamper our efforts to care for our guests? We will do what we can to ensure there are no problems. Very well. I'm counting on you to make sure we have no blunders. Natsuhi let out a sigh of relief. She had been prepared for the worst, but damage to the telephones wasn't the kind of trouble she was worried about. Then again, even this would probably be enough to spark sarcasm from Ava. Natsuhi gave her head a light shake. Are the preparations for breakfast proceeding well? As to that, we haven't been able to find Gohda. The arrangements for breakfast have yet to be carried out. What did you say? Natsuhi was indignant. To her, this was a much bigger problem than the phones not working. And despite that, this piece of information was the part that had been postponed. Why did everything go well most of the time, and then come to something like this, when the relatives were visiting? Natsuhi put her head to her forehead and shook her head. Well, I suppose he slept in. At any rate, just see to it that someone hurries up and prepares breakfast. I don't care who. What? Natsuhi exited the hall and turned around for a second to close the door to her room. The creepy thing she saw there silenced her completely. It was an unpleasant sight, as though someone had dipped their fingers in a reddish-black liquid and scratched at the door around the doorknob. It was probably some sort of awful prank, arranged by some person who wanted to make it look as though they tried to force the door with bloody hands. What sort of prank is this? How awful! I also just noticed it as I came to call you. I will clean it later. Perhaps this is a vulgar joke by one of the guests. Disgusting, truly disgusting. Who in the world would pull such a childish and disgusting prank? Natsuhi had a pretty good idea, but of course there was no proof. So even if she pushed the issue, it would just seem as though she was making a fuss about nothing. In fact, it would surely be better to act as though she hadn't even realized that such a prank had been played on her. Natsuhi gave the order to have it cleaned, and headed off to the parlor with a squeak of her heels. When Natsuhi and Genji arrived in the parlor, Ava and Hideyoshi were already there. Good morning, everyone. Morning, Natsuhi-san. I heard Gohda-san would be making us breakfast, too. My stomach's been getting all excited since I woke up.
Dude, I get the voice. A very Tyler heavy episode to start. The shout out Genji. After all, it seems the food is all you can look forward to at the head family household.
I am pleased to see that you too are in high spirits so early in the morning, Eva-san. With a weary expression, Natsuhi returned Ava's gaze, which was fiercely competitive despite the early hour. Then Kanon jogged in. After bowing an apology to the relatives for running inside the mansion, He noticed Genji and told him something in a small voice. Canon, have you still not found Gohda?
My apologies, madam. I went all over the inside of the mansion, the guest house, but I still have not found him.
Where in the world has he gone? At any rate, breakfast is a higher priority than finding Gohda right now. See to it immediately.
Yes.
Canon glanced at Genji. It seemed he had something else to report, but it was uncertain whether or not the words should come from him. Genji nodded and decided to give the report himself. Madame, it is not only Gohda. Your husband is also nowhere to be found. My husband? Yes. Even before visiting you, I went to his room to tell him that breakfast wasn't being prepared, but I did not find him there. Furthermore, he is not the only one missing. Rudolph-sama, his wife, and Rosa-sama are nowhere to be found. I'm so off with his voice. Not in the guest house, nor the mansion.
Yes. They were not in their rooms in the guest house either.
When she'd heard that Gohda alone was missing, she'd assumed he slept in or was loafing around somewhere. However, now that she'd learned that several of the relatives were also nowhere to be seen, she began to take a slightly more optimistic view. Could last night's family conference have continued all night, up until the present moment? If so, they might have wanted to cool their heads after being shut up in a stuffy room. Going out for walks on their own through the rain. The part about cooling their heads really sounded like something Kraus would say. Gohda had probably been summoned to accompany them and aid them in some way. Gohda was not a man who lost track of time. He had to understand that preparations for breakfast would be hindered if he did not return. However, maybe the family conference had continued until this very moment, with an atmosphere that would make it hard for anyone to slip out. Yes, that theory would be quite convincing for Natsuhi. She remembered the illusion she'd felt that morning, as though the previous night had never ended. When she learned that the feeling wasn't just an illusion, she once again took a deep, wary breath. After all, that banquet of filthy vultures circling Kinza's property was still going on. Perhaps they are still discussing the inheritance somewhere in the garden, or maybe the beach. At any rate, if we don't call Gohda back, we'll never be able to begin preparations for breakfast. So what are you saying? Are Nissan and the rest still continuing the discussion? She had planned to say it in a small voice, but Hideyoshi overheard Natsuhi and managed to grasp the situation.
Nissan and Rudolph-san sure are tough. Maybe it's just the youth in Rosa's case? Just a bit after midnight, the two of us were so tired that we headed back to bed. Though I do remember that Nissan and the rest were still having a heated discussion at that point. Men certainly are unpleasant when they all get fired up.
Natsuhi snorted, her face still blank. Canon, search outside. If you find Gohda-san, tell him to return immediately and begin preparing breakfast.
Certainly. Natsuhi Nei-san, we don't know for sure that they're outside, do we? Couldn't they also have been inside Father's study?
I see. That's certainly possible. I don't know what path their conversation took, but there's certainly a chance they moved to Father's study and let him in on the discussion. I can't imagine that Father would willingly let them bring such a detestable topic into his study.
You really think so? Well then, there's nothing we can do. I'm sorry, Genji-san and Kanon-kun, but could you search outside? It wouldn't be that strange for Nissan to suggest they go outside for a walk to cool their heads, even in this weather. I'll go to Father's study. Who knows, they might actually be in there after all.
Ava-san, I couldn't ask a guest like you to exert herself so. I will go. I can also wish him a good morning while I'm at it.
Oh, then I'll leave it in your hands. Though I somehow doubt he'll return your greeting. Natsuhi-san, have you always been on such good terms with father?
I don't know whether you could call it that, but I am sure that I have gained his trust as the wife of the successor of the Ushimiya family.
Then I'm sure he'll at least answer you right. I'd like to at least have breakfast with father. Do you think you could convince him to come down and join us? It seems that he thoroughly despises the rest of us, but I'm sure he'll listen to you if he trusts you that much. After speaking so boldly, if you're unable to convince father and come down alone, then I doubt you'll ever be able to claim that you've earned his trust again.
I am not confident, but I will try. Natsuhi responded, looking discouraged. However, knowing Kenzo's temperament, she had absolutely no confidence in her ability to bring him out. Ava was clearly mocking her, confident that Natsuhi wouldn't be able to get Kenzo to come down. But even so, Natsuhi would lose face if she gave up, saying it was impossible and letting Ava go instead. Ava's mean-spirited and unreasonable demand made Natsuhi clench her fists tightly. When Genji realized this, he softly spoke to her over her shoulder. Madame, please take this if you would. And this is? Genji handed Natsuhi a sparkling gold key of ornate design. It was a key to Kenzo's study. The study had an auto-lock and couldn't be unlocked as long as Kenzo forbade entrance. However, since Genji was especially trusted by Kenzo, he was allowed to carry a key to that door. But if this key is used, won't you also receive the blame? When the master is sleeping deeply. When the master is sleeping deeply, simply knocking on the door will not suffice. And it would be more difficult to persuade the master to leave his room if you must talk through the door. Please use this. Genji. Until now, Natsuhi had thought of Genji as a cold servant who wouldn't do anything for her, since he worked directly under Kenzo. But it looked like she would have to alter her understanding of him. She wanted to communicate her gratitude, but by then, Genji had already turned his back on her and was walking down the corridor with Cannon. But as Natsuhi watched them go, the words directed at her from behind were sneering.
Well then, you must bring father with you, okay? After all, it's his son's precious wife who's asking. I'm sure he'll listen to you. We're guests, so we'll just relax here at our leisure.
Quit it, Ava. You're taking this too far. Sorry, Natsuhi-san. We're counting on you to deal with father. Without answering, Natsuhi forcefully spun around on her heels and quickly left that place. After all that excitement the previous night, there was no way anyone was going to wake up early. Oh, there you go. It's not you.
Oh, shit. Is this Battler?
Battler?
After all that excitement the previous night, there was no way anyone was gonna wake up early. George and Nikki, Jessica, and I were snoring loudly on the beds in the cousin room. But Maria, who had gone straight to bed without joining in, was completely awake. Is this Badler? I guess
He's just... Yeah.
As she rubbed her sleepy eyes and looked around, she was met with the loud snoring of the other three cousins. For a while, Maria had to think about what had happened. After
Maybe
that,
it switched back.
yeah, this feels like neutral.
Hey, it started with Battler and it switched to neutral. After that, she realized that her mother wasn't with her, and she quickly got lonely. Maria left the cousin room, trying to head to the room that had been arranged for her and her mother. Paying no heed to the three who were sleeping soundly, she slammed the door shut. In response, Battler mumbled and rolled over in his sleep, but it wasn't enough to wake him up. After a while, Maria returned, once again opening the door with a lively bang.
Ooh.
When she had left the room, her face had been sleepy, but now it was black. But Now that she was back, she looked irritated. After that, she climbed up in Battler's bed, which happened to be the closest, and started yelling and jumping on it like it was a trampoline.
Ooh, ooh, ooh. Wake up! Ooh, ooh. What? Is this an enemy raid? Surround them! After making sure I was awake, Maria moved over to George and Iki's bed and started jumping on that too. In that manner, the three of us were all greeted with an extremely pleasant awakening.
Thanks for waking us up, Maria-chan. You stopped us from sleeping in after that late night. If only you could have been a bit more gentle about it.
George Nissan, you really are an adult. I respect that.
It'll be 7 soon. Well, it's not really a bad time to wake up.
Face, real.
Based 7 a.m. paddler. Ooh. Mama's not here. Ooh.
Aunt Rosa? She wasn't in her room? I wonder if she's already woken up and gone to the mansion.
Not here. Ooh. Mama. Ooh. Maria kept groaning ooh and looking unhappy. She didn't exactly seem lonely because her mother wasn't around. It was more like she was irritated and thrown off balance because her mother wasn't where she expected. If we could just tell her where her mother was, that alone would probably calm her down. But unfortunately, we had no way of knowing where Aunt Rosa was, except that she wasn't here.
Anyway, it's time for breakfast, so let's head over to the mansion.
Oh, that's right. Maria, let's go to the mansion together, okay? I'm sure Aunt Rosa will be there too. Ooh? Mama's in the mansion? And then I'll go there. Ooh.
Yeah, guess we should go to the mansion. Our parents have probably already gone there.
Maria regained her usual composure so completely. Her earlier tantrum now seemed like a lie. We got dressed, left the room, and headed for the mansion. I like to believe because of the sprites they sleep in these clothes.
Did he say they got dressed?
Yeah,
I just assumed they did.
He did. He
Okay.
said they got dressed. I still choose to believe that they sleep in these outfits.
Well, I've always assumed that they just slept in their suits.
Mm-hmm.
Once more, there was a knocking sound on the study door, but there was no answer. He seemed to be sleeping still, and I could not wake him. He seemed to be sleeping still, and I could not wake him. If she went back downstairs and said something like that, Ava would probably be amused and triumphant. And even putting Ava aside, it was problematic that Kinzo had stayed shut away during this entire once-a-year conference, not even coming down to greet anyone. Even the family head, no, especially the family head, couldn't fail to make an appearance. I wonder how I can convince him myself. Natsuhi readied herself and used the key that she borrowed from Genji to open the door.
You know that post that's usually like Rika? And it's like, can this bitch have a good day? That's how I feel about Natsuhi.
Even though she was prepared for the sweet stench which seemed to eat into one's brain as it poured out. I've got brain cancer. Even though she was prepared for the sweet stench, which seemed to eat into one's brain as it poured out the small crack in the door, she couldn't help but grimace. I just, read a whole sentence before saying it. It should probably might make it things easier, huh? Thinking that he might still be sleeping, Natsuhi entered the room quietly. When she did, Kinzo was already awake and looking down out of the window. So you're awake. Good morning.
There's some fire going on in the Umineko chat. I was gonna put Natsuhi's face on there, but I decided to post the good night gif I found with Natsuhi wearing a sleeping cap with a silly little ball on it. And
Oh, I got a
Garfield
good
on it.
image.
I like that post a lot. That's really good.
Should have a good Natsuhi image here somewhere.
How did you get in?
Kinzo spoke with his back still facing her. His voice was not harsh but calm, and Natsuhi was slightly reassured. However, though he was awake, he wouldn't have ignored all that knocking if he was in a good mood. Natsuhi wasn't able to relax. My sincere apologies. I asked Genji's son, and he allowed me to borrow the key to the study.
Oh, Genji did. If my friend thought it was that important, then I have no choice but to listen. So, what business do you have with me?
Well, breakfast will be ready soon, and I would greatly appreciate it if you would join us.
I will eat here. Have it brought here like always.
Here we go.
So that's a good Natsui image.
But father, this family conference happens only once a year. Please, at least let them see your face.
Go back downstairs. Are you asking me to join in as they discuss how to chew up my inheritance after I die? How foolish. Let them speak of such matters as much as they please without me. And if that's what you call a family conference, it's hardly worth leaving my room for it. I am busy. Do not bother me.
His last words carried the threat that any further questions would not be appreciated. Natsuhi realized that adding any further pleas would finally bring his wrath down upon her. She didn't look forward to facing Ava's sarcasm, but there was nothing more Natsuhi could do. Is that so? Understood. I'm sure everyone will be sorry to hear it, but I will tell them. Natsuhi decided to give up. Bowing slightly, she tried to leave the room before Kinzo's spasmodic temper could flare up. Oh, I think I have another Natsuhi image. Hold on. As she did, Kinzo spoke to her. His voice was so calm and gentle, it felt like it came from an entirely different person.
Natsui. It's been quite some time since you married into the Ushiromiya family.
Yes. It has been many years since I was first permitted to bear the name Ushiromiya.
Do you sometimes long for your previous family?
No. Marriage means abandoning your birth family. I am Ushiromiya Natsuhi. The Ushiromiya family is the only family I can come home to, the only one I am fond of. She truly wasn't exaggerating. Such was the resolve she felt whenever she applied the Ushiromiya family name to herself. And that's precisely why she was so saddened when her husband didn't treat her like an Ushiromiya, leaving her to race about in vain.
If Kraus were a woman, and you his husband. No, I won't say that.
What do you mean by that, father? Natsuhi was shocked. If Kinzo's words just now were what they seemed, it would have been more than enough to make up for all she'd suffered up to that point.
Forget it. It's just the nonsense of an old man.
Kinzo once again faced away from her. He told her to forget it, but Natsuhi couldn't help feeling a warmth in her heart. Father, even though I, Natsuhi, am not connected to you by blood, I am still your daughter. I will most assuredly see to it that your honor and glory and everything you have left behind are protected.
You do not have the right to wear the one-winged eagle. However, the one-winged eagle is surely engraved in your heart. That is irrefutable proof that you are my blood relative, one who will inherit the glory of the Ushiromiya family. Some will sneer that there is no eagle on your clothes, but such words are not worth lending an ear to. Only those who have held the eagle in their hearts are my true blood relatives. I now consider it an honor that you are welcomed into the Ushiromiya family.
Without saying anything more, Kinzo remained with his back to Natsuhi. However, Natsuhi couldn't help but feel something warm well up inside her that she hadn't felt since long ago. When she had just been a child, Natsuhi bowed silently to his back and left the room.
Ah, good timing. How is father? You were taking so long, so I came to check.
When Natsuhi left the study, she saw Ava climbing the stairs, and their eyes met. Ava was smirking unpleasantly, thinking that Natsuhi would leave grudgingly after failing to convince Kinzo. However, the way Natsuhi was now, such a frivolous laugh would not disturb her. She was not permitted to wear the family crest on her clothing, but she was permitted to wear it on her heart. In her heart. So she spoke calmly, clearly and confidently, the dignity of the one who would protect the Ushiromiya family's glory. Father said he would not join in on the family conference. He says he has no interest in discussing such obscene matters.
I figured you'd say something like that. If you failed to persuade father, just say so.
How pitiful. I'm beginning to see why father lamented so.
What do you mean by that?
Natsuhi did not answer. Just as Kinzo had done earlier, she showed Ava her back as she headed down the stairs. Ava finally realized that she was being made fun of, that something had happened to quickly bolster Natsuhi's confidence. Even so, she apparently didn't have the courage to risk Kinzo's wrath. Unable even to knock on the door, she could only click her tongue, making a motion as though scratching at it, and follow after Natsuhi.
So, were Nissan and the rest there? Did you ask father about them?
I didn't get the chance to ask. I didn't get the chance to ask, but they were not inside the study. Father would never let them into his room to discuss such a lowly topic, so it is unlikely he knows where they went. Let us go downstairs and wait for the servants to return from their search. Breakfast may be late, but how would you like some tea, Ava-san?
That would be fine.
Ava couldn't hide her confusion at the complete difference in Natsuhi's attitude. She was acting so boldly, and while Ava hated to admit it, she even had a sense of dignity about her. Unable to find fault with anything, Ava could only follow Natsuhi back to the parlor. When the two of them returned to the parlor, Hideyoshi had been joined by the 4 children and Nanjo. Genji, who had been talking with Hideyoshi, reported the current situation when he noticed that Natsuhi had returned. You still have not found my husband and the rest? Yes, my apologies. Also, Kumasawa has started preparing breakfast. Fuck. She said that she will need just a little longer. The clock read a little past 8. 8 o'clock should have been the time to start breakfast. Normally going over that time limit would be a disgrace to the host. Kanon is now searching outside. Also, no one has seen Shannon either. Even Shannon's missing. Tell you, just how many people did my husband bring with him on his little walk? Just how many people had gone missing by now? Now that the number was this large, it was starting to feel truly unpleasant, as though the people were the only ones being left out of something interesting. At least, that seemed to reflect the feelings of the children, and Maria in particular. She was indignant, her stomach grumbling, almost as though her mother and the others had left her alone to go off and eat something delicious without her. The other children were flipping through the channels on the television, trying to find a program that might interest Maria and cheer her up again. Nanjo was sitting on the sofa, gazing blissfully at the children while reading a book. It must have been a book about chess.
Yeah!
The sound of footsteps came rushing towards them with a pitter-patter. There's only one set, so they realized before seeing who it belonged to that it was probably Kanon, not Kraus and the rest.
Madame, excuse me.
Judging by your appearance, you still haven't been able to find them.
My apologies. I still haven't.
That will be enough. You've worked hard. She didn't know where they were, but they had to be somewhere on this island. They hadn't had a thing to eat since the previous night, so their stomachs must be growling about now. They'd probably come plodding back of their own accord before long. By now, Natsuhi was thoroughly exasperated and started to feel that there was no reason for them to go out of their way and search. I will go to the kitchen and prepare some tea for all of the guests. Thanks to both of you for all of your hard work so early in the morning. Natsuhi left the parlor, acting as though the release in tension had caused a new surge in her headache. Kenan tried to call her back, but Natsuhi left swiftly. What is it? Was there something else?
Yes. I was unable to find her husband or anyone else, but... well...
Kenan sounded evasive. It looked as though he didn't know where they were, but had spotted something that might be connected to their disappearance. Ava and Hideyoshi noticed this exchange of words and came over. They'd probably picked up on something strange in Kenan's behavior. What's going on, Kenan-kun? You find Grouse, Nissan, and everyone else?
Actually, the Rose Garden storehouse looked strange.
What do you mean, it looked strange?
It was, how should I explain it?
Kenan hesitated once more. His tone wasn't at all what you'd expect from this unusually fearless boy. Seeing this, Ava and Hideyoshi looked at each other dubiously.
What do you mean? Are you saying that Nissan and the others were inside the storehouse? No, I'm going to inspect the inside now. I just came back to get the key, but,
I don't really get it, but it sounds like we've just got to look around inside it. Where's the key to that storehouse?
It's inside the servant room. Oh. Is that Ava?
Nope.
Or, okay.
Kenan.
It's inside the server room. Oh. It is in the servant room. Let us check inside the storehouse at once.
Kenan dashed off to the servant room and returned with the key. Genji left the parlor, saying that he would go check, but then Ava and Hideyoshi followed after him. What was this something strange about the storehouse that had caused the unusually fearless Kenan to hesitate? It was still pouring outside, but perhaps their curiosity over this something that Kenan couldn't talk about won out. While the children made a big fuss watching television, Kenan and the rest dashed over to the entrance. The Rose Garden storehouse was a place that housed various tools used to manage the garden. It was definitely not a pretty building. Because of its appearance, it had been built so that it was hidden in the corner of the Rose Garden. Kenan, Genji, Ava, and Hideyoshi came cutting across the Rose Garden holding umbrellas. They entered a small path just off the Rose Garden, which was normally off limits for those approaching the garden and only used by those maintaining it. As they dashed down that, the storehouse came into view in front of them. It was quite an old shed, and compared to the flawlessly perfect beauty of the Rose Garden, it was pretty seedy looking. It was easy to understand why it had been built in a hard-to-see place. Ava and Hideyoshi arrived at the storehouse long after Kenan and Genji. You two sir are fast. I thought my heart was gonna explode.
I never knew they had a storehouse way over here. But, what is that?
When Ava looked where Kenan was pointing, she was at a loss for words. Noticing this, Hideyoshi also followed Kenan's finger and was likewise too shocked to speak. The entrance to the storehouse was a kind of shutter, and there, everyone suddenly realized why Kenan had been unable to find words to describe what they now saw. On the shutter, which was completely filthy from being exposed to wind and rain for so long, stuck right on it, there was something that looked like a strange, dark red liquid. Mucus? Or maybe it was some sticky paint. An indescribably eerie shape was drawn on the shutter with some kind of ghastly substance. The rain had caused it to drip down like fresh blood leaking from an open wound. No more beating around the bush. Some kind of mark was drawn there. The ghastly substance that looked like blood. In a shape that seemed to suggest something ominous. 2 circles were drawn there, and inside them was a design that looked like a cross. The four ends of the cross were widely exaggerated, and it looked like some kind of crest from somewhere around Europe. And in the cracks between those shapes, written closely packed together, were some unfamiliar characters, or possibly symbols. What a vulgar bit of graffiti! Could this be one of those magic circles used in demonic ceremonies? It wasn't surprising that Hideyoshi would say that about such a ghastly shape, drawn in a deep red, dripping substance.
When was this made?
There was nothing drawn here when I came by yesterday, before it started raining.
We must do something before anyone else sees this. If they laid eyes upon it, it would cause them great discomfort.
That's right. Even though it's just a shed, I wouldn't want to leave such an unpleasant piece of graffiti alone for even a second longer than I had to.
There's some paint inside the storehouse. Let us paint over it temporarily as an emergency measure, and then repaint it again someday when the weather is good. Genji remembered that he had just recently seen another scribble, and that it too had been made with a strange dark red substance of the same color as this. That must have been, and that's right, he'd seen it on the door to Natsuhi's room.
Kanon-kun, let's remove this scribble quickly and go back, okay? Even though it's just a storehouse, it's really irritating to have graffiti around the home I was brought up in.
Yes, ma'am. I will take care of it immediately.
Cannon squatted in front of the shutter and unlocked it. He then lifted it up with all of his strength. A boisterous noise resounded, and the eerie shape drawn on that shutter began to get sucked in through the top as the shutter was raised. At least for the time being, that ominous drawing disappeared from their direct gaze, and they all breathed a sigh of relief. Thanks to a kids program they had come across, Maria was feeling much better. Badler and Jessica were poking fun at the kids show at every turn, cackling together. George was enjoying the program with Maria from her perspective. Najo sat on a sofa by himself, passing the time by reading quietly. They heard hurried footsteps coming from the hallway. They were the footsteps of a single person. Did that mean it wasn't the group of four that had just left? It was Genji. It was very Reverend Genji, who considered being out of breath a violation of a servant's virtues, to be gasping for air. He had probably come dashing back from outside the mansion. His shoulders were soaking wet, and he didn't have his usual trim appearance. When Genji noticed Nanjo looking at him, he gave a small silent bow and quickly approached him. Dr. Nanjo, my apologies. Please come with me quickly.
What is the matter?
As Genji whispered something into Nanjo's ear, Nanjo went pale. He rose from the sofa, trying not to be noticed by the children, who were still engrossed by the TV. Then the two of them rapidly left the parlor, muffling their footsteps. Just as they were about to exit the parlor, they came across Natsuhi, who was pushing a serving cart loaded with a tea set. Genji whispered something into Natsuhi's ear, and Natsuhi went pale too in apparent shock. Then, leaving the servant cart where it was, the three of them dashed towards the entrance. George noticed them running down the rose garden through the window.
What is this? Is it that Genji-san and Dr. Nanjo? And that's Aunt Natsuhi, isn't it? What's up, Aniki? Maybe something happened. They look terribly flustered.
When Jessica and Maria saw that Ava, Hideyoshi, and Nanjo were no longer in their seats, and that the serving cart had been abandoned in the entrance to the parlor, they also realized that something was the matter. Could there have been some kind of accident?
Yeah, let's go check it out.
It's no fun if we're the only ones left out, right?
For some reason, what Badler said sounded extremely indiscreet, but they couldn't deny that they were a little insecure and concerned about seeing the adults run off into the rain without regard to their appearance. Let's check it out, okay? I'm worried that something might have happened. Jessica's uneasy words spoke for all of them.
Hey, Maria, you coming too? Or will you watch TV?
Ooh, wanna watch TV? Ooh.
Let's go on without her. Maria-chan will be back soon. You keep watching TV, okay?
Ooh.
By the time the kids made it outside, the adults were no longer in sight. But Jessica seemed to have a pretty good idea where they'd gone, judging by the direction they'd been running. Following Jessica...
Oh, alright, welcome back, Badler. Following Jessica, we ran through the rain-soaked rose garden. The wind seemed to suddenly get stronger. The malicious sound of thunder began to rumble like it had the previous night. It felt like an eerie something had surrounded the island, and it was trying to stop us from moving forward. Jessica, is there something over this way?
I'm pretty sure there's a shed for gardening tools or something.
What in the world could be going on in a place like that?
Just as Jessica had said. Nope.
Just as Jessica had said, they began to see a storehouse in front of them. They could also see the adults there. The shutter of the storehouse was open, and several adults looked as though they were searching for something. For some reason, only Natsuhi was outside the storehouse, without even holding an umbrella. She looked like she was hanging her head, and her back was facing them. There was Genji, Najo, and Natsuhi, who had just left the mansion. The ones who had left earlier, Kana, Ava, and Hideyoshi, were also there, making for a small crowd of people. But there was absolutely no bustle of activity. When Natsuhi realized that the children were approaching, a terrible expression rose to her face, and she ran at them, with her arms spread wide. You mustn't come any closer! Go back to the mansion! But despite that, no, because of that, the kids saw the scene Natsuhi was trying to keep away from them. Inside the storehouse, with its shutter wide open, a faint fluorescent light shone down, and right there was... I can't do a fucking Jessica scream. It's Jessica screaming! Ah! Jessica's piercing shriek rang out. But it's just because Jessica's scream was the loudest. The same thing spilled out of Badler and George's mouths as well. Ava spread her arms just like Natsuhi, roaring at the kids with a bone-chilling expression on her face.
George, take everyone and return to the mansion. Quickly. Right now.
When Natsuhi spread her arms... Whack the Badler.
When Natsuhi spread her
obviously.
arms, I thought she was trying to prevent us from advancing any further. But that wasn't why Ava was spreading her arms right now. She was trying to stop us kids from seeing that terrible scene. It was her mother's art, trying to protect the eyes and hearts of us children by blocking our view of that terrible scene by at least the width of one's arms.
One of her arms.
It's Badler?
The man.
Is this some kind of joke? Is it? I'd seen this kind of cheap scene all too often. In manga, TV, anime, and movies. I'd seen it over and over again. This was just seeing something appear in real life that I'd seen plenty of times before in some of those more sensational movies, right? That alone shouldn't. But that suit, it's the old bastards, isn't it? I get it. And that's Uncle Kraus, Kirie-san, and Aunt Rosa. Ugh.
Dad! You mustn't, Jessica! You mustn't go in! You mustn't look! Dad! Ah!
Rigor mortis has set in across almost the entire body. Most likely, 6 hours or more have passed since death. As far as I can tell by looking at the damaged area, there's a high probability that they were damaged after their death. No, I must watch what I say. I'm a general practitioner. Examining corpses is outside my area of expertise.
Fucking, this music is like 20% louder right now. Edit. So what's going on here? Just killing him wasn't enough, so he went to do something like this? The devil! This is the work of the devil!
Natsuhi caught Jessica in her arms, and Aunt Ava caught George and Nikki. So I was the only one who could approach the entrance to the storehouse. Only there had been someone there to catch me too. I wouldn't have needed to have this horrible evil scene burned into my eyes. No, that's not it. It isn't that there's no one here to catch me. The people who should catch me, they're right there, aren't they? Just as Jessica said, it did look like a storehouse for gardening tools. A lawnmower with extra blades, a grass sickle and a hammer. Some carpentry tools such as a saw, piled up potted plants and bags of fertilizer. And treated just the same, the corpses of several people had just been laid to rest here. No, they had been tossed in there. I can tell them by their clothes. That old bastard and Kirie-san, Uncle Kraus and Aunt Rosa. Beyond that, Gohda-san and... Are there still more of them? How many people died? You're fucking kidding me. That's more than I can count on one hand. Damn it! I didn't know whether it had been one of those gardening tools, which if used for something other than their intended purpose could definitely be wielded with naked brutality. Insane description, Badman.
We got 5 dead people.
5 dead people, yippee!
We'll get to that in a minute.
Well, there's some horrible tool been brought in here specifically for this. Anyway, each one of the bodies jammed in here had been given an atrocious makeup. It wasn't makeup. It was more like their faces had been plowed. Their faces were smashed, forced into expressions that normal people couldn't make even after death. I couldn't tell where the eyes or the noses were, but I could find their mouths, because they were gaping wide, their gums exposed. But their front teeth were missing, and even the cheeks that should have covered all this up were torn up and laid bare. That trendy makeup you always spend so much time on, even though you're a man, isn't doing a thing now. Ugh. Dad, I always thought you were going to hell, but still, not like this, right? You weren't such a son of a bitch that you should have to suffer so brutally. And Kirie-san, didn't I tell you to stop going out with this guy? There's absolutely no reason for you to end up like this too. They got no faces. No faces. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it. Ah!
Badla-san, you mustn't look anymore. There's no way your mother and father would want you to see them like this. For their sakes, you mustn't look anymore.
Dead people are supposed to have faces that look like they're sleeping peacefully, right? They got no faces. My dad and Kirie-san have no faces. I don't even know what kind of faces they were wearing when they died. What's wrong with me? Will I have to see these smashed, monster-like faces every time I remember them? That's just great. I didn't want to remember that old bastard's smug face anyways. Just great, just great. But why even Kirie-san's face? Kirie-san wasn't a crook. Sure, she ticked me off a bit now and then. But she was like a cool big sister to me. This is wrong. This is all wrong. At least Uncle Kraus says it better, doesn't he? It's not his whole face, just the side. At least he's got half his face left, right? That's still better. That's still better.
No! No! I don't know how to do Jessica in that way. Scream. Voice.
Jessica filled her ears with the sound of her own screaming, trying to shut out my reckless words.
It's George.
George.
Stop it, Battle Lagoon! Just stop it! Just stop it!
Anarchy. Ah! Disregarding age and appearance, I fell to my knees, clinging to Anarchy's waist and sobbing. It was as if I was crying on behalf of everyone there. Representing the feelings of everyone there, I screamed over and over.
Father, the ones lying dead over there are Uncle Kraus, Uncle Rudolph, Aunt Kyrie, and Aunt Rosa, and Gohda-san. Just those 5, right?
No. There are 6 people. There's one more person over here. The body Hideyoshi was looking down on now happened to be hidden among the shadows in that mountain range of objects, in a blind spot to George, who stood by the entrance. So George couldn't tell whose body it was. So George cursed himself. He cursed the fact that his worst guesses always turned out to be right.
So, the one lying at your feet is Shannon, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. It's Shannon-chan. George fell completely silent. He shook slightly, his lower lip trembling. Normally, he would have wanted to run to his beloved's body, screaming and crying. However, before rashly rushing forward, he worked to keep his composure and asked his father.
Is Shannon the same as Uncle Kraus and the others?
Hideyoshi deeply understood the meaning of those words, so he couldn't give George an immediate answer. Or rather, he felt that silence was the only sincere and loving response he could give George right now. When George asked if Shannon was the same, he meant to ask whether her corpse was in the same condition as the others or not. Since Hideyoshi hadn't denied it, it meant her corpse was in the same brutal state.
Can I look at Shannon?
No, you can't.
Why not? After all, I won't be able to see Shannon's face again, right? So why won't you let me see what her face looked like at the end?
The last time you met Shannon-chan was yesterday, right?
Yes.
I see. When you left her, what kind of face was she showing you?
It was a wonderful smile.
After he handed her the ring, she hesitated, even though she must have already made up her mind. Then she looked bashful, and ran away because she was embarrassed to let him see her face looking like that. That's the expression that was revived in George's mind. I see. Then I'm sure, Shannon-chan would want to leave with you that smile in your memory. Hideyoshi looked down upon Shannon's body lying at his feet. Just like the other bodies, it was in such a horrible state that it'd make anyone want to cover their eyes. Her head had been smashed in from the side, and no more than half her expression remained. If the remaining, blood-soaked half of her expression had been wiped clean, would that graceful smile of hers have peeked out? Well, only half of it. Without thinking, Hideyoshi slapped his hands over his eyes. How brutal. If her face was going to be crushed anyway, then only all of it had been crushed. Then, if only all of it had been crushed, he might have been able to temporarily distract George from his pain by making the pathetic suggestion that it was someone else wearing Shannon's clothes. But half of her face had been left untouched. It caused the body so much humiliation, while still proving beyond a doubt that the body was Shannon's and no one else's. How inhuman, how brutish. Do you want to read the tips now before chapter turns over?
Yeah, you can.
All right, with this music in the background. Ushirimiya Kraus. His corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. The direct cause of death is unknown, but it seems the side of the head was smashed after his death. This is the beginning of everything. Ushirimiya Rudolph. His corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. His face seems to have been smashed after death. He has a right to lament his ill fortune. Ushirimiya Kirie. Her corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. Her face seems to have been smashed after her death. She was chosen by the demon's roulette. That's all there is to it. Ushirimiya Rosa. Her corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. Her face seems to have been smashed after her death. I'll get to see her again, so I don't feel lonely. Servant Gohda. His corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. His face seems to have been smashed after his death. How unfortunate. Apparently, he was originally supposed to be on duty in the guest house. Servant Shannon. Her corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. It seemed the side of her head was smashed after death. Don't worry, everyone will be revived in the Golden Land.
Really funny these tips are written in POV Maria.
And there, trying his best to burn the image of the remaining half of Shannon's expression into his eyes, as she lay at Hideyoshi's feet, was Kanon. Kanon was not crying. Tears had risen to his eyes, but they did not drip down. But that didn't mean he wasn't feeling as much sadness as everyone else. Losing Shannon, who had lived with him in the same orphanage, whom he had loved as a sister, must have been the same as losing a blood relative. George, I'm sure Shannon-chan is saying thank you. She must be glad you didn't end up seeing her in such a pitiful state. I'm sure. She's thanking you for holding strong and showing restraint.
I understand. I understand, Father. I understand.
George leaned against the outside wall of the storehouse, crouching down limply.
Father, I have a request.
What is it? What is it?
I want you to look for me. Is there a ring on Shannon's finger?
A ring. Let me see. Hideyoshi crouched down. As he did, Kanon slightly pointed to one of Shannon's hands. Ugh. Yeah, there is. It's a diamond ring. The valuable diamond. Must have been pretty expensive.
And which hand? And which finger is it on?
The ring finger of her left hand. I see. So Shannon-chan was engaged.
George, don't tell me you.
Ava, that doesn't matter now. A man made a lifelong promise to Shannon-chan. A man promised her happiness for life. Who that man was isn't at issue here. Isn't at issue here. Being told that by a man, it's a woman's dream, isn't it? I don't know when she received this ring. I also don't know who gave it to her. However, even so, Shannon-chan took this ring. Then she accepted it and put it on her ring finger. I'm sure the man who gave it to her was also happy. To most of the people there, Hideyoshi was simply disturbed by this extraordinary situation and was blurting out nonsense. However, someone who knew of George and Shannon's true relationship would understand the full meaning of those words.
I see. Thank you, Father.
George stood up. The traces of tears still streaked his face, but his expression had returned to his usual calm one.
Let's go. Battle Lagoon, Jessica-chan. If we stay here any longer, we'll get in the way of the adults.
You're right. Jessica sniffled once, showing her face to her mother who had been holding her the whole time, to let her know that she was okay now. When she faced George again, she once again had on her usual expression, although she still couldn't smile. Battler, hang in there. Battler kept on crouching in front of his parents' bodies.
I'm sorry. Crying like hell calmed me down. You bastard, Dad, I bet you're laughing at me. After all that shit I talked about you, here I am crying like a baby just 'cause you died. Well, so what? Guess I got that gene that makes you cry when your parents kick the bucket.
Battler's face was still bright red from the tears, but he had at least recovered enough to fake a smile, if only a bitter one. Canon! You mustn't remain here any longer either. Take the children and return to the mansion. Natsuhi had been standing under the rain this whole time, unable to take a step into the storehouse. Maybe she had her own way of grieving, different from Battler's. Realizing that she had to take on a role of responsibility now that her husband was dead, she gave Canon those orders.
Yes, madame.
Canon rose silently and turned to...
Canon rose silently and turned to face me. His face was pure white, almost as though his own heart had died along with Shannon. And there was no life in his expression. On an ordinary day, he'd been told to guide the children through the beautiful rose garden. Canon might have led the way, but now, there was no distinction between Canon... Nope. Neutral.
But now there's... No.
I wouldn't think Battler would refer to himself as the children.
But now there was no distinction between Canon and the children. They were just kids, about the same age, suffering the pain of losing those close to them. After making sure that the children were leaving, Natsuhi started giving orders to Genji. Genji, contact the police immediately. They probably won't be able to come until the typhoon passes, but they should be able to tell us what to do next. Understood. There's an emergency radio, so I will use that to contact them. When she heard that, Natsuhi remembered. That's right, the phones were out today, weren't they? However, they also had a radio, since they couldn't necessarily rely on phones all the time while living on an isolated island. At any rate, they should start by contacting the police and receiving their instructions. Everything else could wait. Dr. Nanjo, is there anything more you can do here?
Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do.
Understood. Kenji, could you at least cover their faces with something? Exposing them like this is humiliating to them as well. Yes, ma'am. Genji picked up several dried-up towels from inside the storehouse. When Ava stopped him with a shrill voice...
Wait a second! Stop! This is the scene of the crime, isn't it? Then we mustn't disturb it. We all panicked and walked in here with our shoes on, but even that will surely get in the way of the police's investigation, right?
Natsuhi glared at Ava, offended. Objectively speaking, Ava was right. Even so, she glared at Ava as though accusing her of refusing to do those tragic corpses which had been humiliated even after death, the simple kindness of covering their faces. However, Ava had spoken both calmly and correctly. This horrible situation definitely wasn't an accident. It was a crime. Someone had killed them. It was a murder case. So they needed to be careful to avoid disturbing the site any further. They had to do what little they could to aid the police, preserving clues that might help catch the detestable culprit.
I agree with Ava-san. Until the police come, we should leave everything be.
What do you say, madame? You're right. Very well. Close it up. And just in case, we should put a different lock on it. Different lock? Yes. When we came here, the shutter was locked. That means the culprit used the key to the shutter to lock it. That makes sense. So does that mean the key that opens the shutter, but the culprit's fingerprints on it?
I'm sure it'll be worth submitting to the police as evidence. But Kanon-kun usually has it, and he used it to unlock the shed just now. It'll probably have Kanon's fingerprints on it. Also, that key was handed to Genji-san just now, and he took it with his bare hands. It doesn't look like it'll be very useful as evidence.
That was careless of me. My apologies. Genji-san, are there any other keys to this? Are there any other keys to this storehouse? No, only this one. So the culprit walked out of the servant room with that key, and was nice enough to return the key to where they found it. Hideyoshi's theory sounded plausible, but it was actually very strange if you thought about it. Why would they go through all the trouble of returning a key they stole? No, if you think about it even more deeply, there are some points that are even more bizarre. When a criminal hides a body, they're usually trying to delay the point at which it will be found, so they can use that time to escape. The 6 weren't necessarily killed here, but it was reasonable to assume that they were killed somewhere on this island, carried to this storehouse, and hidden to delay the discovery of the crime. And yet, the eerie magic circle scribbled on the storehouse shutter had eloquently indicated the location of the hidden corpses. Sure, it didn't explicitly mention the corpses, but 6 people had gone missing. In that situation, someone had made such an obvious piece of graffiti and even returned the key to the shutter. Almost as though they wanted the corpses here to be discovered. Anyway, we can't put all our faith in a lock that the culprit has opened once before. If we want to protect the place from the culprit's hand, I think we should put a new lock on it.
I think that's a good plan. I agree.
Genji fished around inside the storehouse and unsealed a brand new padlock that had been inside the small box. What should I do with the key? I will take it. I'll take responsibility and hand it over to the police. Natsuhi took the key to the padlock from Genji's hand. After that, they all exited and lowered the shutter. And so, the corpses were once again sealed behind that shutter, which was still covered with that creepy magic circle. Genji crouched down in front of the shutter to fasten the new padlock. Shutters often have a place in front where you can attach your own lock, in addition to the main lock of the shutter. This was one of those types. In the midst of the roar of thunder and the pouring rain, the storehouse stood there ominously. With its closed shutter still covered in a blood-like creepy substance, it swallowed up the bodies of the 6. To Natsuhi, putting the new lock on it wasn't mainly to preserve that scene for the police. She might have felt like she wanted to shut that mouth for all eternity, to prevent that eerie beast from swallowing up any more victims. Come on, let's go everyone. Dr. Nanjo, thank you very much for your work. Genji, hurry and contact the police. I will do so as soon as I return. The adults left the storehouse. The ghastly magic circle drawn on the shutter kept the 6 bodies in its throat, looming eerily as lightning occasionally lit it up. Wow. Next time.
Next time, maybe we figure out
Who
who killed everyone.
Maybe.
I think
All
we
the
solved the
answers
mystery.
will be revealed next time.
Next time.